What's up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode number 79 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. This show is brought to you in part by Amazon.com. If you want to help support the show and do your shopping on Amazon like you normally do, just go to spuntoday.com/affiliate links, or just click on the affiliate links tab up at the top center of the page, and then click on my Amazon banner and do your shopping like you normally do, and it'll help support the show. And it's much appreciated. In this episode, I speak about Season 5 of Orange is the New Black, the movies Spider-Man Homecoming and Despicable Me 3, the Defiant Ones documentary, and UFC 214. If any of that sounds interesting to you, stick around. All right, so Orange is the New Black Season 5 came back with a bang. The last two seasons, the 2 seasons prior, Seasons 3 and Season 4, were the show started falling off. This is just personal opinion. My wife, for example, I watched the show with her, and she, like, Season 1 and 2 were great. We were both into it. Season 3, we were both like, she was like, this wasn't as good as the previous ones, and I agreed, but it was all right. In that sense, I give like more of a chance to shows when it comes to shit like that. Like, she'll be like, oh, it sucks, and I'm like, yeah, but it had that, really good 10 minutes in it. You know what I mean? So it like keeps me in it longer. To me, it just matters that, what you want from things. Like, if you're looking at it for entertainment and you're not entertained, then that's it. What's the point of it? Me personally, entertainment is like one of the things. I want to be entertained, obviously, if I'm watching a show or a movie. But then I'm also looking at if there's anything to gain from it, knowledge wise, or flows in dialogue and writing and like stuff like that. Like more technical shit that I'm looking into, but that's just because I'm into like writing, so obviously everybody's not going to be into that and be able to like look past a shitty show to try to find like the diamonds in the rough. So that was Season 3, and then Season 4 came around, and my wife was like, oh yeah, I'm like not going to watch this series anymore. Like, this shit sucks. And I agree that Season 4 wasn't Season 4 was probably like the worst season of all. But I wasn't at that point of, I'm not gonna watch this thing anymore. Season 5, I convinced her to watch with me, or I think maybe like I watched like the first 2, and I was like, yeah, you should see it. It's actually pretty good. Or maybe we just started watching it together after some convincing, but we both did, and it was great. It was a very, very strong season. Up there with season like 1 and 2. And it even got her like back into the show. If you guys remember, Season 4 ended with, spoiler alert by the way, it ended with one of the characters dying, Poussey, at the hands of one of the COs. And this season picks up where that one left off. So it's dealing with that type of like police brutality, but in the setting of a prison, which is more CO brutality. But within that same realm, and tackling the same kinds of issues, and even bringing up police brutality throughout the series. The show, it's had some poignant social commentary points throughout the season, and yes, it was entertaining, but it also dealt with this type of stuff, along with the police brutality issue, subpar prison conditions, which of course is not the same for every prison. I'm sure there are prisons that are better, prisons that are worse, and it's a spectrum like everything else is. But this dealt with certain criticisms that you hear, like lack of educational services or opportunities, real rehabilitation, medical conditions. Like, for example, the show's about it's a woman's prison, if you guys haven't seen it. And speaking about not having tampons and stuff like that, like basic woman health needs. shitty food, and not just shitty food, but like food with no nutrition, which should be the metric to labeling something shitty food, but most people, myself included, just think shitty food as in, it tastes like shit. But if it's good for you, then technically it shouldn't be called shitty food. But this is just like shitty on both fronts. Looks like shit, tastes like shit, but also, no nutrition. And I think I'm trying to think if I mentioned in a previous podcast, or if this is just part of the novel that I'm working on, because I know I touch on prison related shit, but which, by the way, I'm gonna give you guys a full update hopefully soon on the novel. I'm like trying to give myself a deadline. Not trying to. I gave myself a deadline of December of this year to have it completed, which is kind of aggressive, but at the same time, I've been working on it for like forever. Anybody that listens to the podcast knows that, and I know it's not something that should be rushed, obviously, and people take fucking years and years and years to write a novel, especially the first one. There's a lot of hesitation behind it, but I want to be a touch more prolific, quote unquote, than that. So, but I will give you guys a full update once I get to like the second draft stage of it, second and third draft stage of it, which I feel that I'm close to, especially now with giving myself this deadline. But I can't remember where I spoke about this, but there's like companies that have government contracts for certain prisons, like the for-profit prisons, and they're like telecommunication companies that have contracts for like all the prison phone systems and like stuff like that, and people that have vested financial interests in prisons. And more of them are food companies, and there's one, I think it's Aramark. I don't remember if the Aramark is the food or the telecommunication business, but they were fined for like supplying food that was so old and fucked up and rotten already that it had maggots in it, like before being delivered as like a new batch of food. You know what I mean? And it's, companies that are driven by the bottom line skimp on everything to increase the bottom line, including quality, to the point that you have conditions like that. You know what I mean? And by the way, I'm not like a tree hugging human rights liberal when it comes to certain things. Like if you tell me that this person's in prison for biting the heads off of 3 people, and we're feeding them maggots as their sentencing or something like that, you're not gonna hear a peep out of me. But this isn't that. This is that this isn't giving a piece of shit human being what they deserve. This is companies skimping on quality, trying to make a buck, and the byproduct of that is lack of oversight and maggots in food that gets served to people whose main thing should be rehabilitation. You know what I mean? Not, here, eat some maggots. So whatever. It speaks about subpar prison conditions, to get back to the main point of season 5 of Orange is the New Black. And what else? Healthcare and stuff. Mental health. Definitely deals with mental health. Crazy Eyes, as she's called on the show, is like a big fan favorite character, and she's great, by the way. And they even deal with kind of like the naivete of just giving people mental health like pills, and different pills, like, oh, this is for crazy people, take this, and it's like, no, that's not her specific medication, so that won't work on her. And that'll make her comatose type of thing, which is kind of ironic too, because the way they treat mental health is with like trial and error in terms of pills. Obviously, psychologists or psychiatrists, whichever one's actually prescribed, they have data to base their prescribing on. But it's not like a foolproof method. It's not like you have a headache, take a Tylenol, or you have a migraine, take a Furoset. It's sorry guys, I had to pause this and for a few minutes and completely lost my train of thought. But I left off somewhere along the lines of the medication and stuff for mental health, right? So it's like we'll prescribe you lithium, or we'll prescribe you this other thing, and then see how you react to it, then either raise or lower the dosage, and if you still aren't feeling right, we have to prescribe a different type of pill until we find the concoction that works for you, or whatever. And that's generally how like mental health is handled at this point, at least from the medication perspective, not speaking to like actual counseling and like stuff like that, which also is a part of it. And what else? There was a riot throughout the majority of the season. I think the whole season probably. That was interesting to see, the inmates take over the asylum type of thing, and the power dynamic between the guards and the inmates shift. And the writers had a little fun with that. They even found a way to work in like the internet viral video culture into it. While the inmates took over the asylum, Maritza and I forget the other girl's name, they start doing like makeup videos and shit like that, putting them on YouTube, and they get like this huge fan base. So it was cool. It was a dope season. Definitely hooked people that were teetering back into the show, and we'll have them open to watching season 6. So good job on season 5 of Orange is the New Black. Spider-Man Homecoming was a dope movie. I enjoyed it. I don't, people, it was like sold as the best Spider-Man of all time, and I can't say that it is. And I'm not saying that it's not. It was a really good movie. I enjoyed it, and it's definitely, there's pros and cons. There's a bunch of pros and cons. I'm partial though towards Tobey Maguire. I don't know if it's because he was like the first one or what, but I always liked him as Spider-Man. I thought he was like a perfect like Peter Parker Spider-Man, and I know he was like polarizing in that role because people were like, "What? He fucking sucked," and some people loved him. I'm on the Team Tobey side of that debate, I guess. And I heard that he's a dick. That he's like one of those like yell at a waiter like type of elite asshole types, which is complete rumor and speculation, and that I think I heard once upon a time. So, and I have no way of knowing, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's something that's always like stood out, which still suck if that's the case. But and whatever, as far as being a Spider-Man, I thought he was great at that. The other one, which I forget the actor's name, but he was the one that was in Hacksaw Ridge and was Eduardo Saverin in the Social Network movie. That Spider-Man I didn't like at all. Like, I didn't like the Spider-Man or the Peter Parker that he played. Whereas the Tobey Maguire one, perfect Peter Parker and a good Spider-Man. So this new one was great. This new one was definitely better than that Eduardo Saverin Spider-Man. I really like that he was, because the story of Spider-Man is like a high school kid, right? That gets bitten by a radioactive spider and gets all these powers and shit, and he's starting to figure things out. Tobey Maguire played like an older version of that. I guess his was like in college. He was on a college trip, but you know what? Was Spider-Man a high school kid? Because he had a job as a photographer, right? Didn't he? And that's how he would always like sell stories of Spider-Man, because he would like set up cameras, take pictures of himself, sell it, and that's how he like got by and made money. And he was like the exclusive photographer for Spider-Man. Spider-Man knew him and whatever, they were boys. I don't know, so maybe it was his senior year of high school, I don't know. Anyway, Tobey Maguire, it always seemed like an older version of Spider-Man. This one, if that's the case, that it was in high school, then it made sense that he was. Well, actually, yeah, even Tobey Maguire was in a high school setting. It just seemed older. Anyway, I guess it started in high school, then they just got older, whatever. All right. Point being that this one was a real high school kid, not like a Dawson's Creek. Shout out to Dawson's Creek, one of my favorite shows growing up. But not like a 16 going on 35 type of teenager. It was just a regular teenage kid, and acted like a regular teenage kid that would just get powers, and like his best friend would be in his room and like catch him crawling on the wall and be like, holy shit, you're Spider-Man, and he's like, no, I'm not. He was really like a regular kid, you know, how I would expect I would act if I got bit by a radioactive spider and became Spider-Man when I was fucking 16, 17 years old. You know, you wouldn't have it all together and all figured out and be ready to like save the world from shit just because you were bestowed with powers. You'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck do I do? And then try to do cool shit. What else? So I like that aspect of it. It felt like more grounded. Him as an actor, he did a great job. He just turned 21 in real life, so he was closer to that, you know, and he looks like he's a teenager. He has like one of those like baby faces or whatever. So that worked casting wise. His best friend was hilarious. He was, you know, he just like wanted to be what did he call it? He wants to be the guy in the chair, the guy that you call and he gives you directions and tells you where to go and stuff like that. And you know, he was like a kid too, you know, the unpopular kids that got something super cool and he wanted to use it to be popular and go to a party and, you know, get the girl and blah blah blah, like all that type of thing, like regular teenage shit. I did not like that Aunt May was so young. And by the way, I love the fact that Marissa Tomei was in it though, you know, so it's kind of like a catch-22 because Marissa Tomei is amazing, but she was Aunt May. Aunt May is not supposed to be like a hot single woman. Aunt May is supposed to be like an old gray-haired lady, you know. That's what I guess I'm used to from the first few Spider-Mans, and I think from the comic books too. But yeah, so I didn't like that didn't go, you know, to me. And I know there's probably some like comic book nerds out there that'll be like, no, you don't know, in Spider-Man 37 there was a parallel universe rip in the reality and Aunt May was actually his same age because he wound up being old. Like, all right, I'm not that deep into it, but I just mean like the general storyline. I like that they went away a little bit. They took some liberties, I guess, with the whole Mary Jane storyline, and they kind of split her up into two girls. There was the one girl that I thought was going to be like the Mary Jane role that Peter was always trying to impress and be and that she like loved Spider-Man and stuff like that the way Mary Jane does. And that was that girl, but then her name wasn't Mary Jane. And then at the end, they revealed that this other girl, this little like gothic nerdy girl, that always had a crush on Peter, just a regular nerdy Peter, that her name was Mary Jane or MJ somehow or something like that. And they revealed that at the end. So they kind of split that role into two different girls, which is kind of cool. That was interesting. I like that. Look at me being a hypocrite. I don't like the young version of Aunt May, but I like the two girls instead of one Mary Jane. And they didn't play that up until the very end, like when that got revealed. So that left it open to see where that can go for the next movie. In terms of like I said, Peter Parker, he was great. Spider-Man, he was awesome. Probably a better Spider-Man than the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Not probably. I would say yeah, he definitely was, because it was also he was like enhanced by the Tony Stark and the Avengers and shit like that. So high level technology like built into his suits and like stuff like that, which makes sense. You know, it's easier to wrap your head around that, you know, than a teenage kid that, you know, shoots spider webs and, you know, he's kind of strong and stuff, but also enhanced with all this extra like next level shit. Kind of helps a viewer wrap his head around, you know, what's happening and suspend disbelief that much more. The best part of it, one of the best parts of it, probably the best part of it to me, was the fact that it was like Queensed out, like the whole shit. It was like it repped Queens really hard, and in ways that I didn't even notice. Like for example, my brother told me about a song by the Ramones, and that was in it, that I'll probably play in the outro of this episode, so you guys can check it out if you stick around for that stuff. I always play music in the background of the outro, so you guys can check that out. But the Ramones are a group from Queens, from Forest Hills, which I did not know. So that was dope. So they even went Queens on that level, like on background shit. I noticed my other boy told me about the Del Mar deli. Like it was still Queens, but they, instead of, I think Spider-Man's like from Woodside or some shit, like that deli actually is like in Astoria or like somewhere else. But whatever, to make it work, obviously for the storyline, they use different parts of Queens to help bring it in. But at least they used Queens. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they shot in Florida and then said, you know, yeah, this is Queens. You know what I mean? Like it was like legit Queens shit. My favorite thing was Franklin K. Lane High School, which is on the very borderline. It's on the Queens side, but on the borderline, literally like a block away from the division between Queens and Brooklyn. But it's a high school here. Actually, probably like 10 minutes away from where I live. And there's a shot from the train station. When it gets off in the train station, that's actually the train station that's like 75th or 77th Street on the J train line. But obviously they made it like a Woodside or wherever the hell he lives in the story. Train station name. So they changed the name of the station. And the school that he's going to, like they show it from the top, is Franklin K. Lane High School, which is a legit school that's here, which is, by the way, like one of the baddest fucking schools around, or was when I was in high school. It was like the school that I think I was zoned for that school, but anybody that was zoned for that school and had any like connections or anything like that would use somebody else's or relatives like address to like go to a different high school, because that school was like so bad. In the rumors, which I'm pretty sure are just rumors, because I tried looking this up and I didn't find anything supporting it. But the rumors back then was that Franklin K. Lane used to be like an insane asylum or a prison or something like that, and then they turned it into a high school, and that's why it's so bad and like corrupted and fucked up. And I don't know. Anyway, now it's actually supposedly like a pretty good school, and it's actually split up into 5 different schools in one. Like one of them is for like medical, you know, angled towards like medical stuff. The other one's angled towards engineering or something like that. People that want to study engineering, and supposedly it's a pretty good school now. But anyway, that was cool. That was cool to see. And I was like, holy shit, Franklin K. Lane. And what else? It was just dope. It like repped Queens really hard, and it was a pretty cool movie. I enjoyed it. Definitely, you guys should check it out. That was Spider-Man: Homecoming. Despicable Me 3 was a fun watch as well. I enjoyed Despicable Me 1 and 2. So does my wife. She loves those movies. And we went actually on our 1-year anniversary to see Despicable Me 3. 1-year wedding anniversary. And it was cool. What was super cool in it is that Trey Parker was in it, what the co-creator of South Park, and I had heard a podcast. I think he was on the Nerdist, and he spoke about being in it, and it was interesting because they're not the South Park guys normally just do South Park stuff. They're like in Hollywood but out of Hollywood at the same time. Like they tout themselves as like Hollywood outsiders, and they don't get invited to all the parties. And when they did do some like red carpet thing, they were both like high as fuck on acid, and one of them wore like the J-Lo dress. They're just funny dudes. And they do South Park. They did the Book of Mormon, the South Park movies, and movies like Basketball. Like they've done other stuff, but them, like within their own thing, they have their own thing going on. And this Trey Parker spoke about being a part of something else, like somebody else's something. And who is it that does Despicable Me? Imagine or Pixar? Is it Pixar or Imagine? I don't know. But like a well-established brand or entity, not just brand, like an entity does Despicable Me 3. So it's not like he was going to go in and put like a South Park spin to it. You know what I mean? It's like another behemoth in and of itself. So he was like that. It was interesting from that standpoint, just to be part of something else and see somebody else's like process and approach to things, and just have fun with it and like play his position kind of, and it was cool. And then so I knew he was going to be in the movie, but I completely forgot about it. I saw the movie. One of the characters in the movie is Balthazar Bratt, which is this child actor guy that was super famous as a child actor, and then once he started going through puberty, getting pimples and his voice started cracking and stuff like that, they canceled his show. And he was like kind of like stuck in that time period, stuck in the 80s. And as an adult grew up to be like this bitter, mad at the world. Why did my show get canceled kind of guy. And talking about that the show should have won an Emmy, and he used to watch his own reruns and stuff like that. And he was like one of the villains in the movie, and he was again stuck in the 80s, so he was like dressed up like Michael Jackson kind of style, and he had like dance moves to get away with shit and moonwalk, and chewed hubba bubble gum, and that was like one of his weapons. And he had a Rubik's Cube and like mad 80s shit, which was cool. And he was one of my like favorite characters in the movie. And then my one of my coworkers saw the movie as well, and we were talking about it. And then he mentioned that Trey Parker did the voice of Balthazar, and I was like, holy shit, I completely forgot that Trey Parker was going to be in the movie. And it was just funny that one of my favorite characters in the movie wanted to be Trey Parker's character. So that was cool. So look out for that when you guys watch it, if you haven't already. And what else? The little girl Agnes, she's always like the most adorable in these movies. And she has her own arc, and she's like obsessed with unicorns, and she has like this teddy bear unicorn thing that she always loves. And then her arc is somebody actually tells her that unicorns are real, and that she's going to, and she wants to go capture and find this unicorn and have her own real life unicorn, and she goes through her own thing. And that was kind of cool as well, especially like how that piece of it ended. And yeah, that was it. That was Despicable Me 3. Definitely worth the watch, and looking forward for more. The Defiant Ones documentary is so good. It's I can't even really call it a documentary. I think it's listed as a mini series, because it's a 4-part documentary, each an hour each, so it's like a 4 hour long undertaking, but well worth it. I've seen a couple episodes multiple times, and it keeps you engaged throughout. It's the story of parallel stories of Jimmy Iovine, which is the the founder, creator, establisher, I don't know what you can call him, of Interscope Records, which is the parent of imprints like Aftermath, which is Dr. Dre's label, Shady Records, which is Eminem's label, G Unit Records, which is an offshoot of Shady Aftermath, and Interscope. It's like the parent of all that. Death Row Records, which is, you know, the whole Suge Knight, Tupac. And that's just on the hip hop side of things. Jimmy Iovine is also responsible for people like Gwen Stefani, Black Eyed Peas, 9 Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, etc., etc. And it's like parallel stories between him, Dr. Dre, creating beats together, which was actually Jimmy Iovine's idea, not Dre's, but Dre is obviously the one that brought that idea to fruition and put it over the top, you know, in terms of like mechanics and aesthetics and just brand. But Jimmy's like the guy behind the scenes that makes shit happen. And it was so well, it was so well done. It was directed by Alan Hughes and like co-written by Alan Hughes. And it was a dope choice, like a narrative choice. And Alan Hughes, by the way, he's the director of like movies like Menace to Society and Book of Eli. It was a dope narrative choice too. He showed throughout the four-part episodes, he showed like the back and forth, like the coming of age stories of each one, of Jimmy Iovine and of Dr. Dre. And he went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So he would show a certain period in Jimmy Iovine's life as you know, it's a coming of age story, so it's like progressing throughout the four series. And then you're like so invested in it, you think you're just watching like a thing of Jimmy Iovine, then it'll switch to Dr. Dre and show like a similar time period in Dr. Dre's life, and show the parallels between the two and how their individual journeys led into them meeting and then building what they built, which was not just a multi-billion-dollar behemoth in what Beats by Dre is, but how like the paradigm shift of Apple Music and the transition of the music industry into streaming and et cetera, and along the way being responsible for or taking part in all of these artists that we know, that we're familiar with today, that are like the ones I just mentioned, and also early on in Jimmy Iovine's career having to do with projects that came from people like John Lennon and Bruce Springsteen. What I like about what resonates a lot with me with the documentary is that they are, both Dre and Jimmy are like underdogs that overcame like external and internal doubt by just like sheer like grit and hard work, determination, and just like this want, this like fire, this like a need to like figure shit out and do things how they felt they should be done. And then listening to their backstories and seeing the parallels in them is like amazing, because it's like two night and day backgrounds and upbringings, but the same type of drive and the same type of will and the same type of ability to let something go that most people wouldn't let go, because you know that what you're aiming for, what you're going towards, is better. And not necessarily better by like a certain measurable metric like financially or some other arbitrary number, but they have this like mutual type of understanding of creativity being something that should be left to its own devices, kind of, you know, like creativity trumps all. Like Dre feels most at peace or at home when he's behind like whatever that big ass mixer table is called and creating beats, creating music. Jimmy Iovine says himself that although he did start with like engineering, with music production, and stuff like that. His thing, his shtick, his gift is producing people and like knowing, you know, what songs go with what people and what people should work together, and being able to forge relationships and, like he said, quote unquote, produce people, but understand like when to like step away and let it bloom, let it blossom, let it find its way, you know, with certain people or projects or etc. And it's such a it's a dope documentary. It's motivating, and I recommend it to anybody that's like into this type of shit. And I've always known the name Jimmy Iovine because of Eminem, because Eminem like shouts him out a lot, like or has like in the past, and you know, even 50 and people like that. But he's more like a behind the scenes kind of guy. So I've always like known the name, and I know he was like the president or founder or whatever of Interscope, but I didn't know his story. This definitely gets into his story, and it gets more into Dre's story as well. Like Dr. Dre is like a I guess like a private type of person, and we learned more about him with like the movie Straight Outta Compton. Like that's when I first found out that he had a brother that died, and that's a, you know, true of something that happened in his life. And they actually show him on the set of Straight Outta Compton in this documentary, the Defiant Ones. And that's something that even in the documentary you can see he holds like close to the chest, and he has like this weight that he's carrying around, which was seen like in the movie kind of, and you can see that that's something that he does carry around with him, which I can't imagine not. But something that Jimmy Iovine said was that he was kind of sort of like on the fence about doing this whole thing, but because Dre was actually down to do it, because he's such a closed off type of like person, he was like, oh yeah, it has to be done. Like I have to do it, even though I'm on the fence, because Dre wanting to do it is like unheard of. And so Dre opens up a lot more than I guess people are used to him opening up. And that is the Defiant Ones documentary. Last but not least, UFC 214. It was dope to see Jon Jones come back. This, by the way, UFC 214 was the best card of the year that the UFC has had all year. They've had a few duds. They've had a few fights and cards that should have been bigger than what they were, but they wound up being like quote unquote boring fights, or a lot of like main events that got pulled, like the Amanda Nunes card that she was on, and she pulled out due to that like nasal issue that she has and stuff like that. Corey Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw is another one, because Cody fucked up his back. And Jon Jones and Cormier was supposed to happen. I think it was at the end of last year though, or what was it, like almost? I think was it a year or 2 year layoff that Jon Jones had because of the tainted supplements and the USADA suspension. But whatever, it was a long time in coming, and this card actually 3 title fights on the card. You know, all of them happened, and it was just a bunch of good fights on the card. And starting off at the top with Cormier and Jones, and this is something that, like, Cormier, he's like the quintessential like all-American kind of, you know, Olympic wrestler, you know, clean-cut image type of dude that everybody's supposed to like, but nobody does. Not nobody. A lot of people don't. A lot of people hate on Daniel Cormier, including myself. I used to hate on him. Like, not hate on him, but it was just like something about him that I didn't like a smugness, or I don't know what it was. And Jon Jones is just, you know, arguably the best fighter on the planet ever. But he was like someone that you're supposed to not really like, because he was like a fuck up. Like he was in a hit and run accident and ran away. He parties and does coke. He got popped for tainted supplements, and it found out that he wasn't taking like steroids or anything like that. But he was taking like dick pills, like over the counter, fucking gas station dick pills that are filled with, you know, a bunch of other shit, and they found that one of these pills had a substance in it that is banned by USADA, which is the drug governing body of the UFC, and he got suspended for that. So it was a lot of shit, and he's young. He's the youngest champion ever of the UFC, but he's one of the most amazing fighters to watch. Super unorthodox and creative, and he gives you the show that you visually want to see, like the spinning elbows and flying knees, and he does everything spectacularly. And there's a lot of bad blood between the two, and this was the only like build up to one of their fights, because they fought once, and John Jones beat Daniel handily, and it was the first loss of Daniel Cormier's career. Then after like all these layoffs and stuff like that, with John Jones being suspended and stuff, Daniel Cormier became the champion, defended the title at least like 3 or 4 times against like people that they thought that he would lose to, but he never did. He defended them, and he only had this one loss to John Jones. And their rematch was supposed to happen. Then John Jones got popped again for one of those things that I mentioned, and that fight didn't happen. So then this was the third build up to a fight between the two, and the second fight that actually happened. And this time around, Daniel Cormier kind of like embraced like the heel role, and he wasn't trying to be like that goody two shoes, you know, look down his nose at you type of dude. He was like embracing people booing him and like stuff like that, and that kind of sort of made people like him, actually like him, including myself. Like I was actually like rooting for Daniel Cormier this time around, and kind of like writing John Jones off as a fuck up, and he was coming off as more fake because he was, I don't know, whatever fucking PR people he had like in his corner telling him, you could tell his answers were like stock answers to try to like build up his image, quote unquote, or whatever, his positive image, and that shit didn't work. That shit like doesn't work. Daniel Cormier came out in the first round, and it was like he just needs a couple more rounds, and he's actually gonna do it. He's gonna beat his fucking arch nemesis, John Jones Bones. And Daniel Cormier was doing his thing, and he was taunting him, and he was like catching him and clipping him, and it was going back and forth. It wasn't one-sided by any means, but it was like I gave the edge to Daniel Cormier. Then like his confidence was like building up, and it was like, yeah, see, I told you, you know, once you came back, you were done. And it was gonna also, you know, if Daniel Cormier won, it would set up the rubber match, you know, like a third fight between the two, which would be dope. And then John Jones, true to John Jones' form, completely did his thing and fucking spectacularly won in, I think it was the second or third round. Just demolished him. Like it flipped. And it was like, fuck. Yeah, this guy is is the best fucking fighter ever. So, but it was like an exciting like back and forth, you know, to see. Definitely lived up to its hype, and John Jones was like classy at the end. You know, they talk so much shit about each other, and it's been for years. Like it wasn't just like to hype the fight. It's been like when they weren't even fighting, they would like hate each other and talk about each other in interviews and like shit like that. And John Jones like gave it up to him at the end, and not just as a fighter, but he was like, I wish I could be as good of a man as Daniel Cormier, and you know, he's a great father and husband, and I want to be I should hope to be like more of a man like him one day, or whatever, etc. So it was cool that he did that, and that he said stuff like that. Now the fight that I wanted to speak about was, besides that one, is the Woodley and Damian Maia fight, which was much anticipated. And I don't know. All right, so just to set it up for you guys that maybe didn't see the fight or aren't like into UFC that much. So Woodley is the welterweight champion, current welterweight champion, and he has like this like stigma of being like a boring fighter, I guess. And Damian Maia is an welterweight fighter as well, that's like on a 7-fight win streak, and he is a jiu-jitsu, he's like in jiu-jitsu, like in the entire UFC, any weight division, male, female, he's like the best jiu-jitsu. He's like a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner, like in just jiu-jitsu, but he fights in the UFC. So he's like, bar none, anybody gets on the ground with him, they're getting strangled and they're losing. But that's his like main weapon, you know? So you have to like get people to the ground in order to do your thing. And he's not the best, you know, striker or anything like that. Like, he has that in spades, jiu-jitsu. And everything else, he's like, all right. And Tyron Woodley comes from a wrestling background. He says he's the best at MMA, like mixing things up. So in terms of like striking, he has knockout power. That's how he won the belt in the first place. Knocked out Robbie Lawler, which is known for having like an amazing chin. And so these two were coming up. So it was a stylistic, like clash. But stylistically, I thought it would be like a good fight, though. You know, you have a striker and a grappler. The fight, I enjoyed it. I liked it. It went to decision. And what was dope to me about the fight is that Damian Maia tried to take Tyron Woodley down a record. I think it was 23 or fucking 27 times or something like that. And he got stuffed each and every time. He wasn't able to take down Tyron at all. Like, that set a record. However, they also set a record for least punches thrown in welterweight fucking history or something like that. And that's largely due because of the game plans. Damian Maia's game plan is obviously to try to get Tyron to the ground so he could do his thing in jiu-jitsu. And Tyron was obviously blocking all those. So he had to like counter that strategy. Tyron got a shitload of criticism from it, and he has in the past from Dana White, the president of the UFC, saying that it was a boring fight, that Tyron could have finished the fight in the second round because he like clipped him with the punch, but he didn't like follow up on it. And he was pissed. Dana White was pissed, saying that now he's not going to give him the fight with GSP, which is like George St. Pierre, for those that you don't know, is like the best welterweight in UFC history, but he retired a couple years ago and he's thinking about coming back, blah, blah, blah. But saying that he's not going to give the fight to Tyron because Tyron is too much of a boring fighter, and if you're not willing to take the risk, then you don't get the reward, and blah, blah, blah. He's coming with that type of shit. Tyron then, on his end, you know, plays up as he has in the past, like the race card, saying that it's because he's black that he's getting like kind of like blackballed, pun unintended, and that he won his fight. You know, what the fuck does it matter if it's like quote unquote boring or not? Which again, I personally didn't see it as boring. I kind of see it as kind of like Mayweather gets flack for being a boring fighter, but he's like the best defensive fighter ever. But it's just that the like general fan wants to see, you know, brawls and knockouts and stuff like that. And I'm kind of like I hate when people do use like a racism card or a you know, feminists do that shit too, or like a sexist card or like whatever. And because it's like, and it kind of gives like the argument like, oh, he's doing that, like he, you know, he's pulling his like Trump card or whatever, and it kind of like takes away from the actual argument, I feel. And I'm guilty of it too, but because I feel like it just makes the whole thing like a loaded argument. Like the attention goes away from like the facts and the points and certain things. Although that it can be, you know, maybe he's right, maybe it is because he's black that he's getting shitted on and by the president of the UFC, and or by fans or whatever, because he was getting booed. Like the fight was getting booed like while they were fighting. But I feel like when you say, oh, it's because I'm black or whatever, it's kind of like, ugh, fuck. But it takes away from everything else. So I don't like that, but I understand it, because at the same time, I'm Dominican. You know, I'm brown as fuck. And you get that too. You know, you get certain, you know, it could be you're being treated a certain way because you're Dominican. Or sometimes it's like, or you calling me loud because I'm Dominican or whatever. It's like, no, I'm calling you loud because you're the fucking loudest person in the room. The fact that you're Dominican has nothing to do with it. So it's like it could go both ways, you know what I mean? So with Tyron and Dana, this is my beef, and I side with Tyron on this 100%. And I'm not saying it's a race thing or anything like that, but I think the argument should like stick to the facts. From Dana White's perspective, he's seeing it as, and he literally said, you know, the fans are booing you. That's not a good look. I'm here to promote and sell fights, and if the fans are booing you, that's not helping me promoting and selling fights. That's Dana's argument, and that's his, I guess, that's his argument. Whatever. Tyron's argument is, I won my fights. I'm a champion. I've defended my belt, and I've defended it against different styles. If you put somebody that's a grappler against me, I'm gonna stop his grappling because I'm the best mixed martial artist. If you put me in there with a Wonder Boy who's a striker, I'm gonna neutralize his striking. Like, they call that a boring fight too. And Tyron has a point, because he did neutralize a striker using like striking shit, like defensive striking stuff. He neutralized a grappler in Damian Maia by stuffing all his takedowns in record number of takedowns. So Tyron's like, why am I going to start throwing fucking punches? Which, by the way, he did throw out. He like tore his rotator cuff or his labrum or some shit like that in his shoulder in the first round. So he couldn't throw as many punches as he wanted to. And now he has to have surgery, et cetera, et cetera. But that's like a sidebar. And Tyron is saying, put me in there with somebody who is also an MMA practitioner, not just specific to striking or specific to grappling, and I will neutralize them in that style, which is more of a mixed, striking and grappling and wrestling and everything, which is why he wants the GSP fight. And he has a point. You can't say that he won't do that or won't live up to it because he's matched whatever has been put in front of him. So I think that it would be a great fight. Also, it has the element of, which one of the reporters said in the post-fight press conference to Dana, like, since people are booing Tyron, don't you think he would have kind of like the Mayweather effect in that people will want to see the GSP fight that much more because, whether they hate him or love him, Tyron, they would want to see him lose. Like, if they, if they're hating on him like that much. And obviously everybody wants to see GSP come back anyway. So it would sell. And I definitely agree with that. I would want to fight. I would want to watch that fight. Not for those reasons. I would want to watch it for the reasons that Tyron's saying, that, put him in there with a true mixed martial artist and he'll match that style. And I see, but I don't agree with Dana White's argument of the whole, I'm here to promote fights. People are booing. That's not helping promote the fights. But you're not looking at them in, this is coming from just a fan, not someone who clearly knows what he's doing and is worth like $400 million now after selling the company. But for what it's worth, from my perspective, since you are supposedly catering to the fans, you can't see it as a singular fight type of thing, because it does come off as like a beef with Tyron. You had 12 fights on the card. You had 6 KO finishes. 6 finishes. 5 of them were KOs. And one of them was a submission, which that submission one was I missed it. That was the, I forget the guy's name. Something with an O. Osara, I don't know. Anyway, that was like fight of the night. So you had 6 finishes and then 6 decisions. Tyron happened to be one of the 6 decisions, but you pick on like that one to say, oh, it got booed or whatever. But my thing is that you want to sell and promote fights. Certain people want to see, obviously, like the layman fan or whatever, want to see like KOs and knockouts and brawls and submissions and shit like that. Other people just want, other fans, there's another subset of fans, whether it's large or small or whatever, it's another subset of fans that you also have to cater to, which are like the true martial art enthusiasts or I don't even want to call them martial art enthusiasts, but just people that appreciate masterful martial art performances. And you are a mixed martial arts organization. So you have to appease them as well. And this card did exactly that, 50-50. You had 6 finishes and 6 decisions, period. So you're already catering to them if you look at it from a more like macro level. So the fact that Tyron's fight got booed, but it got balanced out by the Jones and Cormier fight, which fucking got cheers. The fans got what they wanted in the Jones Cormier fight, and another subset of fans got what they wanted in seeing Woodley put on a masterful neutralizing performance and defending his title once again. And you had a dope back and forth brawl also in Robbie Lawler coming back and fighting Cowboy Cerrone, and that is actually a good matchup. Robbie Lawler and Woodley. That's the guy that Woodley knocked out to get the belt, and Robbie had a dope run with the belt since then. Before then, rather. And Dana did mention that might be a good fight for Woodley coming down the line, but we'll see now with all the like bullshit back and forth and egos going around and stuff like that. Now we'll see what happens, but that's just my point. You want to sell fights, you want to cater to fans. You had a 50-50 split in terms of the ways that the fights can go. Some fans got what they want from one half, other fans got what they want from another half. And if you want to like macro it even more, look at it from that's not just like a singular fight, right? You macro it and look at the entire card and see that split. Macro it even more and look at the cards that you've had for the full year and compare it that way. And different strokes for different folks. But I definitely don't agree with that, the Tyron commentary. And then again, lastly, on the flip side, Tyron, if they somebody says they don't like you, it's not necessarily because you're black, although it could be that, but it's not always that. And that's it. That's all I got, folks. That is the episode. And if my calculations are correct, you should be hearing the Ramon song that I mentioned earlier right about now, while I tell you guys on different ways that you can help support the Spun Today podcast. First off, would you like to receive a short email from me once a week on Mondays at noon? I'm recording this on a Monday right now, actually, on August 7th. And this Monday at noon, today at noon, in a couple hours, the people that have already signed up to this will be receiving a midday Monday boost letter. What that is my weekly newsletter where I share with you guys 5 different things. And those 5 things are a podcast pick of the week, a photo of the week, a word of the week, a video of the week, and a quote of the week. And if you want to check out what those look like, go to spuntoday.com/subscribe, which is, by the way, where you can drop in your email address and you will receive the very next one. But at the bottom of the page, you can click on there and see the previous Midday Monday boost letters, the history of the Midday Monday boost letters, and see if it's something that you would be into. And it'll go straight to your mailbox, your email box, and you can unsubscribe at any time if you choose to, but you probably won't because it's a dope newsletter. I would sign up for it myself, and if it was offered to me, and that's why I created it to begin with, because I wanted to share some of the things that I'm into. So check it out, Midday Monday boost letter. You can go to spuntoday.com/subscribe. If you want to be part of the Spun Today podcast and you're a creative of any type, whether you're a writer, some sort of artist, check out the questionnaire that I have on my website at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. It's 5 open-ended questions. And what I do is you guys submit them. I read them out on future episodes. I read your responses on future episodes of the podcast. And if you're like me, you like hearing how the sausage is made for other people. You like to hear from other writers on, what motivates them when they have writer's block, or what other things are they into besides writing. Like, we have this writing thing in common, but what else do you like? Do you like watching Netflix? Do you like certain movies? What types of movies do you like? Do you like fucking photography or pottery or you know what I mean? Like, some people like that. I like that like behind the scenes look type of thing. And the Spun Today questionnaire gives you exactly that. and gives other listeners the opportunity to peel the curtain back a little bit and look behind the scenes. And it's a good way for you guys to, for free, promote something that you have going on, whether it's like your blog, you have a book coming out, or whatever it is. So check out spuntoday.com/questionnaire and fill it out, and I will read your responses on the very next one. And by the way, if you don't want to promote anything, you don't have to. If you want to remain completely anonymous, you can. I'll just read your responses and I won't say where it came from, etc. So check it out. What else? Oh, by the way, that photo website that I was using, Crated, CRATED.com, is they're like canceling Crated or closing down Crated because they had like two similar companies running at the same time. The other one became more successful, and the company chose to like put its focus on that. So for printing any of my photography, you can no longer go to crated.com/Spun Today, because that's being deactivated. But none of you guys are doing that anyway, because there's, I guess, better or more convenient options out there for you. And but my photography, which is located at spuntoday.com/photography, is still available for free. You can download them digitally for free whenever you guys want, and you can get them printed through whatever service it is that you use. If you're into getting photography printed, whether it's like for framed big poster pictures or whatever, or canvases or smaller pictures, you guys can use the internets and figure shit out. What else? Like I told you guys in the beginning of this episode is brought to you in part by Amazon. So a good way to help support the podcast financially is, if you shop on Amazon already, is just to do so by going to my website first at spuntoday.com, clicking on the affiliate links tab up at the top, and that'll take you to my affiliate links page. There you will find a bunch of different affiliate links, including Amazon.com. It's a banner for Amazon, and all the affiliate links on the site work the same way. But if you click on the banner, it's just going to forward you to Amazon's website, where you do your shopping like you normally do. And for driving traffic to their website by, coming to my website first, then you shoot over to Amazon. You do your shopping like you normally do, and Amazon gives me a kickback just for driving traffic to their website. And it doesn't increase the purchase price of anything that you purchase at all. And it's a good way to help support the podcast financially. So check that out. Another way to help support the podcast, if you choose to, is to make donations. You can make donations on a per episode basis by becoming a patron of the Spun Today podcast. And you can do so by going to my Patreon page, which is Patreon, patreon.com/Spun Today. And all the details are there. And pretty much the way it works is you sign up to make a donation of $1 per episode or something like that. And it's no bullshit, no fees. It's not like you donate $1, but it's really, $1.17 because of taxes or fees or anything like that. It's like, if you donate $1, it's like giving somebody $1 on the train or something like that. It's just $1, no bullshit. It's set up on a reoccurring basis, and it would be greatly appreciated. I have specific goals for Patreon supporter donations that come through, which would be to, help supplement the costs of producing the podcast, obviously, but mainly to edit my books. So right now I'm taking the approach of self-editing, which is partly why my first novel that I mentioned earlier is taking so long to come to fruition. But when and if I do gain enough Patreon support, the first thing that I would use that block of money for would be to pay for professional editing. And if you guys want to be a part of that, that would be greatly appreciated. So check that out. Patreon, patreon.com/Spun Today. You can also help support the podcast in a huge way by rating and reviewing it and telling your friends and family about it. If you guys enjoy the podcast at all, I would appreciate you guys telling me so by rating it on iTunes or on Stitcher or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, because you could listen to this podcast on Google Play, on Pocket Casts. You can listen to it on YouTube. I put all the episodes up on YouTube, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, etc., etc. Wherever you're listening to my voice right now, stop what you're doing, stop listening, and just rate and review the podcast real quick, and then tweet it out, and then email it to everybody that's ever sent you an email ever in life. And yeah, that would be appreciated. What else? Check out my book, Make Way For You, which is tips for getting out of your own way. That's my first book. It's a nonfiction, obviously. Just a collection of tips and tricks and kind of like advice that I gave myself to like push myself to like write and even start this podcast. And I thought that, you know, if it helped me, it might help somebody else that feels like they're stuck or in a rut or just could use a spark of motivation and a kick in the ass. So check that out. You can follow me on social media, and that is at Spun Today on both Twitter and Instagram. And like the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Spun Today. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for checking out this episode of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz, and as always, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.